Hey folks, David here. Well, I've been kind of like going back and forth about doing various things in terms of like knife blogging and letting you guys know about various things. I mean, I know there's like ridiculous guys on YouTube for like knives and stuff, like John Wayne Colt 45, for instance. Dude is just flipping phenomenal. Okay, in terms of like his coverage of like varying varieties and like his personal collection is just daunting. Uh, I have many, many good friends who are serious knife guys, and they put their stuff up on YouTube. So I figured it's worth a throw for me to put my ring into it and, basically put my 2 cents worth and basically give you guys kind of like my thing. Um, Period knives of like the 1980s vintage. I'm just a whore for it. Okay, I'm gonna be the first one to tell you guys that when I find that stuff on eBay or like when I'm cruising around gun shows and I find stuff like that, I pounce on it. Okay, my personal collection right now is somewhere north of, oh dear lord, at least 500 or 600 knives, with the greatest majority of them being like bulks of stuff that I'm, still trying to pare down. And my best of the best of the best is probably somewhere in the order of probably about 200 knives. Now, just looking through my personal collection earlier, I was like, okay, what really jumps out at me? Period knives from the 1980s, man. You guys had like those Rambo movies. Well, Rambo's kind of more 70s going into 80s, but those Rambo movies and all the chop socky stuff, and everybody basically going out for the biggest, bestest chopper or slicer or what have you. Case in point, this one here. This is a well. Let me just pull it out and I'll show it to you guys. This one is a 440 stainless slash Japan, model number 21-052, but it is an Explorer. Hopefully you guys can see that. It is an Explorer Survival 2. Now, this guy is, well, for all intents and purposes, it's not homogeneous, okay? It is unbelievably handle heavy. For case in point, just for very simple examination, you have a stainless steel butt cap that weighs, if this thing weighs anything less than about 9 ounces, 10 ounces, probably even more than that. I mean, it's not quite as much as a soda can, but it's close. It's really close. And this is one big nugget of stainless steel, and they machined it out when it would actually have the compass on board. Well, compass on a big piece of steel, is it really going to work? Probably not. Some stainless is magnetic, some isn't, but case in point, it does actually have goodies in the handle. This one actually, I don't think. No, this one's actually empty. I have another one of these. I have an actual doppelganger for this. It's in a little better condition, less handled, so it has less, of course, surface rust from people imparting their oils in there and making the thing rust up. It does have a bead blast finish. It does have a very aggressive grind for the saw. The saw is actually fairly sharp. The blade is actually not exactly dull. It does have a slight S curve to it. So that's kind of cool. It does have a slight S curve to it, so they actually try to do a little bit of engineering on there. It actually was probably slack belt ground. It does actually have this kind of really cool, very, very period 80s thing where it basically has a grind and then a second grind on the false edge. The false edge is lightly sharpened, needs to be touched up. Is this anything I would take out in the field? Probably not, because what happens is the blade is just, well, it's the blade, and then you have a threaded end that goes into the handle, and it probably goes to about here at best. And you can see there's actually, if I shine light in there, there's actually epoxy, and you can see it's actually bottomed out in epoxy to try to get the thing to seal, secondary strength. But basically the only thing holding these two things together is probably about, maybe, I'm going to be generous here, I'm going to say probably about 8 millimeters or so of threaded shank going from one piece to the next. Now there's this little collar here, I guess basically had like the first tightening up and it puts the guard in place. The guard actually has, this is laughable, but the guard actually has their attempt at a straight screwdriver and a Phillips screwdriver. Slight problem, you basically have the Phillips screwdriver digging into your hand. So you have a pyramid shaped point, or a four-sided pyramid digging into your hand whenever you're trying to, like, chop with the thing, or if you're trying to choke up onto the choy, or it actually does have a really good choy. I mean, it's actually a very good design in that regard. You will not index further into the blade. Only problem is when you're trying to index over the guard, yeah, it's biting into you, man. There's a lot of really just not great engineering tweaks they did to this thing. I mean, case in point, if I had this thing and I was fielding it, first thing I would do is I would probably just knock that thing right off the point. Just knock it square off, make it probably square, and just simply say that, down here is really not too much of a detriment because you're going to be stepping over anyway to utilize the choy. But then again, when you start stepping over to index the blade, you're now into the saw edge. Oh, okay, I'll index further. Well, you're now into this false edge. It's kind of really single purpose. I mean, it's actually just a standard flat grind. It's got a very, very slight hollow on it. I mean, it's very slight hollow grind, if at best. It actually has been used. You can see all kinds of marks and what have you on it. And I got into it for probably not a small amount of some years ago. You can see actually it's been, stabbed into stuff. Some of the finish is worn off. It needs to get bead blasted again. But you know what? For the original finish, I'm not going to do that. But I can tell you for a fact, the handle is not exactly small. It's not exactly small. It's a stainless steel tube. Every bit of about, I'm going to say probably about 2 millimeters thick or so. The guard is not exactly light. It's probably every bit about 6 millimeters or so, 5 millimeters in cross section. The blade is probably about 5 or 6 millimeters. So probably use the same blade stock for basically the guard, and for the blade itself is actually probably from that same steel. It does actually have a very similar finish on it. They've all been bead blasted. But I can tell you, when you put this thing together and you put something in the handle, the weight balance on this thing is right about, it is probably right about there. And I'm going to have to play with the thing. But your point of balance is probably, it's probably about a 1/4 inch or so behind the guard. I'm going to have to futz with it to try to get the thing balanced out. But the handle balance on this thing is so handle heavy that the blade feels very, very light and lively. Now, okay, how big is the blade? Well, let's just find out overall specs on this booger. Let's just do that right now. Get myself back in camera. I'm trying to do stuff in reverse. That's why things are not working so great. The sheath is basically just a leather sheath, nothing crazy. It's got one snap on it. It has a stone pocket. Stone is missing. Leather tie downs. Very period correct for that. And basically there's just, riveted together 4 rivets. Basically a hole for the bottom. There is no drain on this thing, so if you get it filled up with water, everything rusts and goes to hell. But, let's see what our specs are on this booger. So this is basically going to be, overall specs on this thing are every bit from nose to tail. It is, well, let's get this thing on camera here. From nose to tail, and I'm going to be messing around trying to get this thing to work right, folks. So hang on a second here. Let me get myself staged up correct. Okay, from nose to tail, it is every bit of about just over 4. It's every bit of almost. Well, it is actually longer than 14 inches. It's about 14 inches and almost a 1/4. So overall length on this thing is ridiculous. Blade length. Let me move my mouse pad out the way. Blade length is going to be 9 inches. I mean, 9 inches, of course, they're measuring in millimeters and probably doing the exchange thereof. Handle length, of course, is going to be about just under 5 inches. But for the average hand, and I actually have rather big hands, it's a really good fit. I mean, the only downside is, of course, you're talking a stainless steel tube that is, well, let's just do the math here. Stainless steel tube that is just over 1 inch in diameter, so it's about 1 inch and 1/8. I forget what that is in millimeters. Call it 30 millimeters. Yeah, about 30 millimeters, okay? So call it a 30 millimeter tube. And for the, a hand of my size, it actually feels really good. Now, in terms of actual usability of this thing, the blade is way light. The blade has all these cutouts in the back, and it gives you some place in which to, well, build a stress fracture and break the blade off. You watch any of the videos that Nos4 did when he abused the hell out of any knife, that was the first point of failure, is any point of cutout, or any point of, if he made a notch in the blade when he was hammering in something, that's where the crack almost always migrated from edge to spine, and the thing sheared. Now, would I ever actually field with this thing? Probably not. It's a very cool period piece, and it's something very interesting in which to play with and show off, but it's probably not anything in which you would wish to, take out in the field and play with, because, well, first and foremost, now it's basically got the collectability. I've got 2 of them. They show up on eBay, and when they do show up on eBay, they get snapped up and the price goes stratospheric. Let me give you guys a shot real quick here of the other side. Hopefully that is kind of showing. It may or may not. It may or may not. My camera's not the best, but basically, if you look at this, it says, on this line, it says 440 stainless, Japan, model number 21-052. On the far side, it says Explorer You can see the Explorer I'm seeing on the camera, but it says Explorer Survival 2. Or Survivor 2. Very cool piece. Probably not something that you want to field with, but if you do find these things, I would probably jump on it, because it is kind of an interesting part to have in your collection, and it's a cool piece. I mean, if nothing else, it gives you an idea of what we were doing back in the 80s, and I don't know if I'd want to take this thing out and actually use it hard use, but it is very, very Rambo-esque. Good times. I'm going to break up with this one, guys, but I want to give you guys kind of a demonstration here and show off some goodies and good knife stuff, and while I'm now playing around trying to make the camera work, and the camera work, but if you guys want to see cool stuff, I'm going to be whipping them out here, and this is the first time out, so this is basically Knife Blog, episode 1. Thank you guys so much for showing up, and, well, this is basically the first step out, and if you guys want to see more of this, well, just leave something in the comments, and I'll give you an idea if I'm basically going to keep cranking these things up or just talking too much, but I don't want to keep these too terribly long, but that's version number 1. Knife Blog. See you guys. Eat good, keep it a 10 ring as always. 80s knives are just too cool. See you guys.